Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. The Boren Awards team is so excited to welcome you all to the final session of our recurring Boren Alumni Ambassador series, Straight from the Source. Our hope with this series is that you will gain a better understanding of what it means to be a Boren recipient, and that we also inspire you all to hit submit on your applications. My name is Bailey Preston. I was also a 2020 Boren Flagship Scholar to Brazil. And I'm very happy to be here with you all this evening as we convene to shine a light and hear from our awesome Born Alumni Ambassador, Ronnie Pruitt. Just so you guys know, there is quite literally no better group of folks than our alumni ambassadors to give you a holistic view of every step of the process and the benefits that come with being a Boren recipient. So, Ronnie, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. We really appreciate it. I would also like to say thank you to all of you attending. We are so excited to see your interest in learning about Boren, applying to the program, and hearing about Ronnie's experience. And we hope that this webinar is beneficial. We'll split today's session in half. First 30 minutes for Q&A, and then the last 30 minutes, or not Q&A, for pre-prepared questions. And then the last 30 minutes, we'll open it up to Q&A. So please feel free to either use the chat or Q&A function to ask your questions, or if you are feeling brave tonight, you can raise your hand and I will call on you in the question that your hands are raised. But without further ado, let's get started. So, Ronnie, just for like quick introduction purposes, give us your name, the year you were awarded, the language you studied, which we all know already, but just for purposes, the country you studied in, and your current federal position.
Thank you for the introduction. Yes, my name's Ronnie Prowitz. I was a Boren Fellow. I was selected in 21, but I also reapplied in 22 because it was one of those weird years with COVID. We didn't know if we were going to have to apply twice or not. I studied Portuguese in Brazil, and currently I'm a foreign area officer for the Air Force under the Department of Defense. And my next assignment will be in Quito, Ecuador. I'm currently in Monterey, California, studying Spanish.
Amazing. Thank you, Ronnie. So to kick us off, why did you apply to Boren? And then how and why did you choose Brazil and Portuguese specifically?
So for me, a lot of my background has been working topics related to the Middle East. Prior to being a graduate student at the University of Chicago, I already had experience in the military, and I wanted to make a transition to our Southcom for us of the Southern Command, which is Latin America. And so this was a perfect opportunity to get the resources needed to be able to study a language. And Portuguese was definitely my top choice. Brazil was my top choice for a country. And so now, after getting that experience and the exposure to the region, it made me more competitive to be a foreign area officer, which I am now. And it gave me an opportunity to not just be able to um, gain assignments at embassies in Spanish-speaking countries, but also at consulates and embassies in Brazil as well.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Ronnie. Um, and then our fourth question is, how was your language, so Portuguese and Brazil, relevant to U.S. national security? And what was your process for writing the national security essay?
So for me, I think this is an important question for everyone to know because um, uh, I chose Brazil specifically because I had kind of a path in mind for myself. Um, and I was kind of in between the world in the government, military, and academics. Um, but I knew going into it, I wanted to work security cooperation with our partners in Brazil and other countries in South America. And I tailored my essay specifically towards that. And I think um, I was kind of a peer mentor to some of the people at the University of Chicago, and I saw a lot of their essays. And I think it's easy to get into the thought of, I'm doing all this great research in college and I'm doing all these things. But that's not necessarily what you want to probably focus on in your national security essays. you really want to focus on, and what I focused on was basically how I'm going to use these skills, these language skills, and how I'm going to bring it into different government positions I was interested in, and how it would make me a better analyst or a better foreign area officer. And so um, uh, it is great to highlight the type of research you've done, the different things you're working on with professors at your various colleges. But really, I think the committee that makes the selection, I don't know personally, but I believe that they're more interested in how you're going to actually apply those concepts once you're an employee for the government.
Yeah, Ronnie, you're 100% correct. Ideally, like, I think what we like to tell people is that there should be a thread between essay number one and essay number two. So, whatever you focus on in your national security argument, if it's the economy, if it's diplomacy, if it's strong space relations between the US and Brazil, right? Ideally, you see that reflected somewhere in your federal service essay as well. So, definitely great tips. Thank you. Our next question is: how has Bourne impacted your academic, personal, and professional life?
So for me, just as a on a personal level, it was definitely I was older when I was selected for the Foreign Fellowship, but it was definitely something that impacted me on a personal level. Like it was a life-changing experience, in my opinion. And professionally, it made me much more competitive for the type of jobs that I'm getting. I really like, I feel like I was good in the military and I had a good career, but this kind of sets me apart from a lot of my peers who didn't have this opportunity to basically have a whole year to kind of focus on filling in any weak areas, whether that's with language or just basically preparing yourself so you could apply to the type of jobs that are more competitive. And so, for me, being a foreign area officer for Southcom, it was a competitive process and it did take some work. And, um, you know, I'm in training now, but I feel like I'm very prepared. And the time that I had in Brazil gave me an opportunity to prepare for this position and really future positions that I will likely apply to in like 2 or 3 years.
Amazing. Thank you, Ronnie. Our next question. I'm gonna kind of tweak these a little bit, but the original question is: where did you fulfill your federal service and why? And what was your experience like searching for federal employment? But since you mentioned you previously served prior to participating in your graduate program, I think it'd be really helpful to kind of like talk more about that timeline, to the extent possible. So, like, what made you join the military in the first place? And then how did you find yourself in grad school? And then how did you find yourself back in military service?
Well, for me originally, I was really interested in the intelligence community. I joined the military fresh out of high school and did my undergraduate while I was enlisted. And I thought I was just going to do 4 years and get out, but I kept um, getting new opportunities with the government. But when I went to the University of Chicago, I was kind of at a turning point where I didn't know if I wanted to seek out opportunities with the government or if I wanted to stay the Department of Defense route. And after, a few years at grad school and doing the fellowship, um, I really saw the opportunity to be able to go overseas and travel. My big thing is, and I'm sure a lot of people here are interested in, that international experience. And for my job, this is definitely, I work at embassies. I change places every few years. For some people, that's a big negative, but for me, that was always something that was a selling point for the career. And so I did weigh the opportunities on the civilian side and in the military as well. And I'm definitely not here to recruit any of you, pitch you on why you should join the military. As you can see, I'm in uniform now. It's not necessarily for everyone, but I and work side by side my civilian counterparts with the State Department and various other agencies. And so we do a very similar job in lots of ways. And we all have our role and different positions to play. But it was pretty clear to me that I wanted to stay. And I think one of the big things with the Boren program is a lot of these positions are very interesting. They're very fulfilling, and the government knows like if you get in one of these jobs for a year, there's a good chance you're going to have your eyes open to the possibilities, and most likely you're going to stick around longer than the 1 year service commitment. And so it's kind of like, the challenge to give it a year and see if you don't want to just stay in. And for me, it was easy decision to make a career out of this.
Yeah, for sure. I'm also wondering what was your pathway like specifically to be a foreign area officer? Again, like to the extent that you can share. Um, so like you mentioned like grad school and then there's kind of like this transition period where you come back. What exactly did that entail to the extent that you can share?
So for as an officer in the Air Force, I definitely had a different route than many, because normally the Air Force and the military in general want you to have experience in your previous career field. I was previously an intelligence officer, and the transition is like once you are at the O3 level, which is like a captain, then you apply to be a foreign area officer. But in the Air Force and the Department of Defense and all the other branches as well under the DoD umbrella, we do have uh, foreign affairs and regional specialists that are civilians that um, uh, work under the same umbrella. Their job is a little bit different than a foreign area officer, but they're also very similar to a lot of people looking from the outside who would do the same thing. It's only us that are like, oh, we have different roles. Um, and that's a really good if you're I think most people, it's a more difficult commitment to be like, I'm going to be in the military and go do this. But there's a job that's very similar on the civilian side for all the branches, whether it's Air Force, Navy, or just the Department of Defense in general, where you're working the same things on security cooperation with our partners. Um, uh, for us, like I have a role in embassies in Mexico for foreign area officers in the Air Force, and they focus primarily on humanitarian topics. And so, for those of you that might be more hesitant for like mill to mill security cooperation, well, we also work humanitarian and U.S. aid topics as well.
Thank you so much for that breakdown. That was very helpful and very insightful. And I think it's the foreign affairs officers at state are the civilian version of what uh, Ronnie does in the military. But I think they're primarily based in DC. They don't have like if whether you consider it a perk or not of traveling and moving around to all the different posts that Ronnie does. Great. And so in as a very general description, what does the Air Force do? What are they responsible for? And then kind of like bringing that down a little bit more, how does your role fit into the Air Force's mission and things like that?
So, like, that's a great question because I feel like you could ask 100 different officers of the Air Force that same question. We'll all have different answers. So, the big picture is uh, we serve national security purposes at the direction of the Secretary of Defense or under the Department of Defense. But at each embassy, in a role like my own, we would have different responsibilities, and that changes basically with the direction of the strategic objectives of the ambassador and the U.S. government there. And so, if the president gives certain strategy or the Secretary of Defense gives certain strategy, then it will kind of work its way down to the different branches and the different embassies. And the Air Force, we really look at the big picture of how does this strategy work with our overall um, strategic objectives for the Western Hemisphere, specifically for us. And so it's an interesting job where we have to understand the big picture, but then we also have to actually execute at the very like micro level when we're working with partners. Like I'm going to go to Ecuador, and they just voted in Ecuador about whether or not they should open up a U.S. air base there. And so for me, that's like something that's like definitely on my mind. I'm about to go to Quito, and like we have no idea. Like they voted against it there, but then we're still like, well, we can't open up an air base, but we could still like bolster our cooperation with the Air Force in Ecuador. And how does that look like? Under what authorities are we able to do that? What authorities do we need to like, advocate for or seek to? What can we do? What can't we do? And so those are the things that we have to. I know that's kind of a verbose answer of saying like, it depends what we do, but that's kind of my take.
No, I think that's also just like a very realistic kind of like cap of what federal service can look like, which is it depends, right? Which is also what we tend to tell a lot of applicants and recipients, right? About just federal service in general. What it looks like depends heavily on where you are, what you do, and all that stuff. So no, I think that was great. Thank you so much. Um, Okay, next question. Do you have I think we kind of touched on what you do as like on the day to day, but if you have anything else to add, feel free. But I will move to our next question, which is do you have any advice for applicants or awardees regarding any part of the boring process? So from applying or considering to actually going abroad to then coming back and fulfilling the service. I know that part of the journey was a little bit different for you, but any advice?
So one of the big things that I'll say is why I was at the University of Chicago and for some of the other schools that I knew people who were considering applying, a lot of people were hesitant based on like the politics that you hear on the news and things like that. To me, it's like if I could give a piece of advice is kind of forget about the politics you see or the rhetoric. The reality is, um, uh, you know, the politics kind of go out the window when you're actually sitting in a seat working a job for the U.S. government. You're just worried about like basically working together to do the day-to-day tasks that need to be done to if it's national security to protect the country or to meet the country's objectives. Um, I know I'm sure we'll get questioned about it later, but with things related to like the shutdown or any uncertainties with that, I just like people to know like that's not how things look like when you're on this side. Like um uh we can go into it more during the Q&A, but I think um, a lot of my friends were like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to apply this year because of like X, Y, or Z that was in the news." And the reality is, anything to happen in the government, it normally takes a couple years, 2 or 3 years. So it's like you just have to give it a shot and then worry about what your task is for today or what the objectives are for your office. So that's my piece for that. And if anyone's on the fence of applying, I would just say, uh, you know, being in a group, cohort for my graduate school and seeing my friends that went on to do like CLS or Fulbright, all of them have great opportunities. But the thing that I liked most about the Bourne Fellowship was you really have so much control over what you want your opportunity to look like. And there's just so much freedom to be able to kind of develop your own program. And the flagship programs are definitely great. But also, if you want to have more flexibility and plan out your timeline and plan out where you want to take class and how many hours you want to do this day, or if you want to have a gap to learn this here, like you have so much flexibility with that. So I think it's hard to find any other program out there that's as generous as Bourne Awards that will be able to give that to you.
Amazing. That was a wonderful, wonderful pieces of advice, Ronnie. I do, since we have like 3 minutes, I do kind of want to pick your brain a little bit just on like this last part you talked about where you're talking about this kind of choose your own adventure experience, the freedom to kind of curate what you do while you're overseas. And for the people who are also looking to do the same thing, I'm kind of wondering what your process was for that, right? Like how did you kind of nail down what it was you wanted to do, where you actually wanted to study and things like that. And yeah.
So on the Caminos page, they talked about different language institutes and language centers that other students have done that's been successful, and I'm pretty confident that Porn would only do that if positive things were said about the program, and so that's a great starting place. I looked up different language centers in the place where I wanted to study. I wanted a balance between um, like the things that I wanted to experience just on a personal level and being able to feel comfortable learning. And um, so I picked Rio, a beautiful place to study, and I picked a language program that was very flexible, that was very I spent my whole career in the military. I wanted the opposite of military style training. I wanted to have it very relaxed teaching conditions, and I wanted to be able to um, work one on one with instructors as much as possible, which is another great thing that is really rare to do. It's very expensive and difficult in the United States to be able to have one on one time with a language teacher 2 hours a day. So just 2 hours a day, I was just one on one with a language teacher. I didn't have to worry about, being in a class with 20 people. It was always very small classes, three, four people, and then a couple hours of private instruction. And I did 4 or 5 hours of training per day, and then the rest was really open to um, invest that time however I saw fit on a daily basis. So I did a lot of activities that were cultural, a lot of volunteer work, and it was very fulfilling to me. And that's kind of one of the things where there's a lot of ways to get language skills by just going out there and immersing yourself and experiencing the culture. So you should definitely do that if you have the opportunity.
Thanks, Ronnie. That was great, and I will second everything you say. Where it's the idea of that like you get the basics in the classroom, but the actual application of what you learned happens in the real world, right? So you should get out and you should do all the things, volunteer work. Yes, 100% agree. Um, but with that, we are right at 7 o'clock. So I'm gonna close out our first half of this session. Ronnie, thank you so much for all of your wonderful, insightful answers. We really appreciate it. And we are gonna give a couple more announcements. So just so I know everybody knows, deadlines are coming up in like literally the next 2 weeks, but I just will reiterate. Um, Fellowship deadline is going to be January 21st, so that's next Wednesday, 5 p.m. EST. Please submit your applications on time. Scholarships is going to be January 28th, also 5 p.m. EST. And again, please submit them on time because we cannot accept late applications. If you have any last minute burning questions or if you would like to chat more with Ronnie, you can email us at boren@ius.org and we'll be more than happy to help or connect you. And yeah, good luck to everyone applying, and we hope that we get to see you all again soon. And have a good night.
Thank you.